She gave birth in chains inside America's most secure prison deep in the Colorado mountains. Hidden from the world, sits a prison so secret that most Americans don't even know it exists. The people inside are kept in concrete boxes, 23 hours a day. No human contact, no windows to the outside world, total silence. This is ADX Florence, the most secure prison in America. Some call it the Alcatraz of the Rockies. Others call it a clean version of hell. But here's what makes no sense. ADX Florence only holds men. Dangerous men. Terrorists. Spies. The worst of the worst. So why does a story about a woman giving birth in chains mention this place? What really happened here? And what dark secret is hiding in the shadows of America's prison system? If this story already has you hooked, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling us what you think about this. We read every single one, and your support helps us bring more untold stories to light. Let's start with what ADX Florence actually is, because understanding this place is the key to unlocking this mystery. Imagine a building where every single piece is designed to break your spirit. The cells are 7 feet by 12 feet, smaller than your bathroom. Inside, there's a concrete bed, a concrete desk, and a concrete stool, all attached to the floor. You can't move them. You can't change anything. The only window is 4 inches wide. It doesn't show you the mountains or the sky. It's designed so you can't see anything but a tiny slice of light. You don't know if it's raining. You don't know if it's snowing. You lose track of time. Meals come through a slot in the door. Medicine comes through the slot. Everything comes through that slot because guards almost never open your door. When they do, you're handcuffed first. Always. The men inside ADX Florence include September 11th terrorists, the Unabomber, the Boston Marathon bomber, and people who killed guards in other prisons. These are people the government believes can never be allowed to communicate with the outside world. Now, here's the strange part of our story. No woman has ever been held at ADX Florence. Not one. The facility has never housed female prisoners. So what does this place have to do with a woman giving birth in chains? The answer lies in a secret that the federal prison system doesn't like to talk about. You see, while ADX Florence is famous because of the terrorists and killers inside, there's another facility that operates in similar ways. A place designed for women who the government considers too dangerous or too difficult for regular prisons. It's called FMC Carswell, and it sits in Fort Worth, Texas. FMC stands for Federal Medical Center. The name sounds gentle, like a hospital, but don't let that fool you. Parts of Carswell operate just like a Supermax prison. High security, constant watching, women locked away from the world. Here's what makes Carswell different from every other women's prison in America. It holds women with serious medical problems and women the system has labeled as extreme management cases. That means in the same facility, you might find a woman dying of cancer in one unit, and in another unit, a woman locked down 23 hours a day, just like the men at ADX Florence. Now, let's talk about something that sounds impossible in modern America. Pregnant women in chains. You might think this doesn't happen anymore. You might think we stopped doing this decades ago, like something from the dark ages. But you'd be wrong. In prisons and jails across America, women who are about to give birth get handcuffed. They get shackled. Even when they're in labor, crying out in pain, some facilities keep chains on their ankles and wrists. Let that sink in for a moment. A woman, 9 months pregnant, her body about to bring a new life into the world, and she's wearing chains. Why? The official reason is security. Prisons say they need to prevent escapes. They say it's policy. They say it keeps everyone safe. But doctors completely disagree. The American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, the main organization for doctors who deliver babies, says shackling pregnant women is dangerous. It's inhumane. If a woman is restrained during labor, she can't move into positions that help the baby come out safely. If there's an emergency, if something goes wrong, the chains waste precious seconds that could save a life. Some states have banned the practice, but many haven't. And in federal prisons, the rules can be unclear or ignored. Before we reveal what happened next, let us know in the comments, did you know pregnant women were still being shackled in American prisons? We want to hear your thoughts. Let's go back to early 2020. The world was about to change in ways nobody expected. A new virus was spreading, something called COVID-19. In China, people were getting sick. Then Italy. Then it started appearing in the United States. At first, most Americans weren't too worried. It seemed far away, but inside prisons, people who study these things were terrified. They knew what was coming. You see, prisons are the perfect place for a virus to spread. Think about it. Hundreds or thousands of people crammed together, sharing bathrooms, sharing dining halls, sharing air in spaces that barely circulate. If one person gets sick, everyone gets sick. And there's another problem. Prisons are full of people who already have health issues, bad hearts, damaged lungs from smoking, diabetes, HIV, all the things that make COVID-19 more deadly. The Federal Bureau of Prisons knew this. They started getting warnings. Medical experts told them to release people who were at high risk, old people, sick people, pregnant women. But releasing prisoners isn't simple. There are rules, there's paperwork, there are judges who have to approve, and there are politicians who don't want to look soft on crime. So while the virus spread across America, shutting down cities and filling hospitals, the prisons stayed full. The doors stayed locked. At FMC Carswell in Texas, there was a woman who should have been released. Her name was Andrea Circle Bear. She was 29 years old, and she was 8 months pregnant. Andrea came from South Dakota. She was Native American, part of the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe. Like many Native Americans in the criminal justice system, her path to prison started with problems that went way back. Problems rooted in poverty and broken systems on reservations. She'd been convicted of a drug crime, not a violent crime, not murder or robbery, a drug offense, the kind of crime that, in another life, might have led to treatment instead of prison. But Andrea's real crime, the thing that would ultimately kill her, was being pregnant in a federal prison during a pandemic. By March 2020, COVID-19 was exploding across America. Hospitals were running out of beds. Doctors and nurses were running out of protective equipment. People were dying alone, unable to say goodbye to their families. Andrea's lawyers filed emergency motions. They begged the court to let her out. She's pregnant, they said. She's vulnerable. If she catches COVID in prison, she could die. The baby could die. The government fought back. They said she wasn't sick yet. They said the prison had things under control. They said releasing her would be dangerous to the community. Days passed, then weeks. Andrea stayed locked up at Carswell, her belly growing, her baby getting ready to be born into a world none of them could have imagined. And then Andrea started feeling sick. At first, it seemed like normal pregnancy stuff. Being tired, feeling off. But then came the fever, the cough, the trouble breathing. The medical staff at Carswell tested her for COVID-19. The test came back positive. Now, remember, this was March 2020. Doctors were just beginning to understand how deadly this virus could be. They didn't have vaccines yet. They didn't have good treatments. They were learning as people died. Andrea's condition got worse fast. Her oxygen levels dropped. She couldn't breathe on her own. She was 9 months pregnant, and her body was failing. The prison had to make a decision. They sent her to a hospital in Fort Worth. But by the time she arrived, she was in critical condition. Think about what the doctors saw when Andrea came in. A young woman, heavily pregnant, gasping for air, a virus attacking her lungs, a baby inside her who needed oxygen too. They had to make an impossible choice. And what they decided next would shock the medical world and reveal just how far America's prison system will go, even when a life hangs in the balance. What happened in that hospital room would raise questions about humanity, about justice, and about what we're willing to do to people we've locked away. But before we can understand that moment, you need to know one more piece of this puzzle. Something about how the prison system treats women's bodies. Something about control and power, and the rules that govern who gets dignity and who doesn't. Because Andrea Circle Bear's story isn't just about one woman, it's about a system, and that system has secrets it's been hiding for a very long time. The doctors at the hospital in Fort Worth faced a nightmare situation. Andrea Circle Bear was dying. Her lungs were filling with fluid from COVID-19. The virus was winning. She couldn't breathe. But inside her body, there was a baby. A baby who was ready to be born. A baby who needed oxygen that Andrea's failing lungs couldn't provide. The medical team had to act fast. They put Andrea on a ventilator machine that would breathe for her. They sedated her, putting her into a deep medical sleep. And then they made a decision that had rarely been done before. They decided to deliver the baby while Andrea was on the ventilator. Think about how unusual this is. Normally, when a woman gives birth, she's awake, she pushes, she participates in bringing her child into the world. But Andrea couldn't do any of that. She was unconscious, fighting for her life. On March 28, 2020, while Andrea lay in a medical coma, doctors performed a cesarean section. They cut her open and pulled out a baby girl. The baby was alive. The baby was breathing. Against all odds, in the middle of a pandemic, with a mother who was critically ill, this little girl entered the world. But here's where the story takes a turn that will make you question everything. Andrea never got to hold her daughter. Not once. Not even for a second. She never saw her baby's face. She never counted her tiny fingers or kissed her forehead. She never heard her cry or felt her warmth against her chest. Because Andrea Circle Bear died 3 days later, on April 1, 2020, Andrea became one of the first federal prisoners to die from COVID-19. She was 29 years old. She'd been locked up for a non-violent drug crime, and she died alone, separated from her newborn baby, separated from her family, in a hospital room guarded by federal officers. Her daughter became an orphan at 3 days old. Now, you might be wondering, where do the chains come in? If Andrea was in a hospital unconscious on a ventilator, was she really in chains? The answer is complicated and reveals something dark about how the system works. When Andrea was transferred to the hospital, she was still technically a federal prisoner. That means the Bureau of Prisons maintained custody over her. Federal officers guarded her room. They controlled who could visit. They made the rules. In many cases, when prisoners go outside hospitals, they're shackled to the bed. Even pregnant women in labor, even women who are too sick to move. The policy varies, but the practice is common. We don't know for certain if Andrea was physically shackled during her final days. The Bureau of Prisons hasn't released those details. Her family wasn't allowed to be there because of COVID restrictions, and because she was in federal custody. But what we do know is this. Andrea was in chains in a different way. She was chained by a system that wouldn't let her go, even when her life depended on it. She was chained by policies that kept her locked up while pregnant during a pandemic. She was chained by rules that valued security over mercy. And most importantly, she represents thousands of women who literally are shackled during childbirth in American prisons and jails. Let's talk about what happens to most pregnant women in custody, because Andrea's story is just the most extreme version of something that happens every single day. Picture this. A woman in prison goes into labor. Her water breaks. Contractions start. The pain is intense. She needs to get to a hospital. Prison guards handcuff her. They put shackles on her ankles. Sometimes they use a chain around her waist. They transport her to the hospital like she's a dangerous criminal, even though she's about to give birth. At the hospital, some facilities remove the restraints, but others don't. Some women have reported being shackled to the hospital bed during labor. One leg chain. Unable to move freely. Unable to shift positions to help the baby come down. Nurses and doctors have testified about this. They've said it's horrifying to watch. They've said it makes their job harder. They've said it's medically dangerous. When a woman is shackled during delivery, and there's an emergency like the umbilical cord wrapping around the baby's neck, every second counts. Having to unlock chains before doctors can move the mother could mean the difference between life and death. After the baby is born, here's what happens next. In most prisons, the mother gets a few hours with her newborn, maybe a day or two if she's lucky. Then the baby is taken away. The baby goes to family members if there are any who can take the child. If not, the baby goes into foster care. The mother goes back to prison. Some prisons have special programs where babies can stay with their mothers for a few months or even longer, but these programs are rare. Most women lose their babies almost immediately. Now imagine going through 9 months of pregnancy behind bars, feeling your baby kick, talking to your baby, planning for the moment you'll meet, and then that moment comes, and within hours or days, your baby is gone. You're back in a cell. Your breasts are filling with milk for a baby you can't feed. Your arms are empty. This is the reality for thousands of women every year in America. Drop a comment below and let us know. Do you think this system needs to change? Should pregnant women be treated differently in prisons? We want to hear what you think. After Andrea died, her story made headlines. People were shocked. A pregnant woman died of COVID in federal custody. Her baby survived but lost her mother. Activists and lawyers pointed to Andrea's case as proof that the Bureau of Prisons had failed. They said she should have been released. They said her death was preventable. The Bureau of Prisons defended their actions. They said they followed proper medical protocols. They said they did everything they could. But here's what the numbers show. By the time Andrea died, the Bureau of Prisons had received thousands of requests from inmates asking to be released because of COVID. They'd approved only a tiny fraction of them. Andrea's lawyers had filed an emergency motion asking for compassionate release. They argued that her pregnancy and the pandemic created a medical emergency. The court was considering it, but she died before any decision was made. Her death raised a massive question. If a pregnant woman during a deadly pandemic isn't eligible for compassionate release, then who is? The lawsuit that followed revealed more details about conditions at FMC Carswell during the early pandemic. Women reported that social distancing was impossible. They shared cells. They ate together in crowded dining halls. Masks were in short supply. Hand sanitizer was restricted because it contains alcohol, and alcohol is contraband in prisons. In other words, the prison couldn't protect the women inside from a virus spreading through the air. But they also wouldn't let them out. More women at Carswell got sick. Some died. The virus tore through the facility just like experts had predicted. Andrea's baby daughter was taken in by family members. She's growing up now, about 5 years old as of 2025. She'll never know her mother. She'll grow up with photos and stories, but no memories. And here's something that will break your heart. Andrea wasn't the only pregnant woman who died in federal custody during COVID. She was just the first. She was the one whose story made the news. How many others were there? How many women gave birth in chains? How many babies were born to mothers who were shackled, who were sick, who were separated from their families? The full count may never be known because the system doesn't like to share these numbers. Now, let's zoom out and look at the bigger picture. Let's talk about why this keeps happening. The United States has more people in prison than any other country in the world. We lock up more of our own citizens than China, Russia, or any authoritarian regime. And we lock up women at rates that have skyrocketed over the past few decades. Many of these women are mothers. About 60% of women in state prisons have minor children. That means kids on the outside, waiting, wondering when mom is coming home. The crimes these women committed? Most are non-violent. Drug offenses, property crimes, things related to poverty and addiction. Very few women in prison are there for violent crimes. But we treat them all the same. We chain them. We separate them from their babies. We put them in concrete boxes. And here's the thing about shackling pregnant women specifically. It doesn't make anyone safer. A woman who's 9 months pregnant, in labor, isn't going to run away. She physically can't. The idea that chains are necessary for security during childbirth is absurd. So why does it still happen? The answer is simple and terrible. Because we can. Because once someone is labeled a prisoner, we stop seeing them as fully human. We stop thinking about their dignity. We stop caring about their pain. The system treats pregnancy like an inconvenience, like something to be managed and controlled, not like the profound, vulnerable, sacred thing it actually is. Think about Andrea Circle Bear in her final days. Unconscious, On a ventilator, her body fighting a virus while simultaneously being cut open to deliver a baby. Alone. No family holding her hand. No one there to tell her it would be okay. Her baby girl came into the world in the middle of chaos and death. Her first breath was in a pandemic. Her first moment of life was also the beginning of her mother's last days. This is what happens when we prioritize punishment over humanity, when we value security theater over medical care, when we decide that some people don't deserve basic dignity because they broke the law. Andrea's story forces us to ask uncomfortable questions. Questions we might not want to answer. Is this who we are as a country? Is this what justice looks like? Is this the best we can do? The practice of shackling women during childbirth continues in many places. Some states have banned it, but others haven't. And in federal prisons, the policy is still murky. Women are still giving birth in chains. Babies are still being separated from their mothers within hours. Families are still being torn apart. And somewhere out there, Andrea Circle Bear's daughter is growing up without her mother. She's one of thousands of children who've lost parents to a prison system that doesn't know mercy. The story we've told you today is an ancient history. It's not something from 100 years ago that we've learned from and moved past. This happened in 2020. This is happening now. The chains are real. The deaths are real. The babies being taken away are real. And until we decide that pregnant women deserve better, until we decide that even people who've committed crimes are still human beings with dignity and rights, this will keep happening. Andrea Circle Bear's name should be remembered. Her story should make us angry, and that anger should turn into action. Because the next woman who goes into labor in chains, the next baby born to a mother who's shackled, the next family torn apart by policies that value punishment over compassion, they're counting on us to care. They're counting on us to demand change. They're counting on us to remember that chains and childbirth should never, ever go together. If this story moved you, if it made you think, if it made you angry or sad or determined to see change, then hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this story. Drop a comment telling us what you think needs to change. And most importantly, don't let Andrea's story be forgotten, because the only way this system changes is if enough people say, enough. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.